Yes, please follow this link. The code isn't there. Let me start with the, let me check with the code. This is asking me to log in. Okay, teach, live participation. It should generate a code now. This is the code in front of you. I'm going to copy this and paste it over here as well. Yes, Umar, have you done anybody was able to join this yet? I think it's going to work this time. No, it's not going to work. So this is the code. This is the link. Let me send you the link again. Or just go to the link to the dearpod.com. Okay, let me put this for everyone. Okay, we have to go to this website, dearpod.com, and they will ask you for the code. Put the code KFAXW. Okay, we can use this as well. Good. Ghazi has suggested a link. Let's try that link as well. So we have got 3 participants. Yes, Yusuf, you have a question?
Mister, I went to the first link that you gave me. It took me to the video, and I pressed.
Yes, that video is for you guys, but you can want to see it after the session. But since we're going to have this as an interactive session right now, I want you to watch the video with me, and then we will be having a small, interactive session where there will be questions, where there will be your opinion, your input as well. All right. So I want you to go to this link as nearpod.com and then enter the code KFAXW. Mohammed has a question. Yes, Mohammed? Mohammed, you have the mic. Mohammed Al-Harbi. I'm giving you the mic.
Mister.
Yes.
Leave the Zoom meeting because in my iPad, for some reason, Nearpod doesn't work. So in the math lesson, I join through in my phone, with my phone, but and then I can get into Nearpod. So, Mister, I'm gonna leave. Can you put me in the Zoom because I'm gonna join in my phone?
All right. So you want to join again through your phone?
Yes, I'm gonna leave now. I'm gonna join in my phone.
Okay, no problem. No problem. So we have 9 people here. We have 17 in the class, 17 boys in the class. So hurry up, boys, try to log into this. Yes, this is Muhammad Al-Harbi. This is the right link. I'm going to send this link to everyone. That you can use this one to directly get in with the code. So we have 11. We'll wait for another 2 minutes. Okay, I have Ghazi, Jawad, Uwais, Abdul Rasim. Yes, Muhammad, I'll send you the link again. And the other boys who are not going to join this, they might have less marks in their participation. Yusuf, Tahir, Salman, Umar, Diya, Basim, Nadir, Amr, Abdulaziz, Awais, Jawad. So please boys try to join the session. Basim, Hamza, Al Sharif, you haven't joined yet. And Hamza, you are not there yet. It's 30 boys, so. Okay, let me double check I've shared the sound. Yes, the sound is on. So let's watch. I'll reduce the voice a little bit down.
Hello, and welcome to the kitchen. I wanted to invite you here today because last week we started off in my bathroom, and I kind of feel bad about that. And also because as I'm making lunch today, I wanted to, sort of use it as a lab. During this time in my kitchen, I'm going to talk to you about 3 different things. 1, the 3 most important molecules on the earth. 2, possibly the grossest sandwich I'm ever going to eat. And 3, an obscure scientist who taught us everything that we know about urine. So far we've talked about carbon and we've talked about water, and now we're going to talk about the molecules that make up every living thing and every living thing in every living thing. I don't care if you're a bacterium, or if you're a blue whale, or if you're Lady Gaga, or if you're a mite living on the Queen of England's eyelashes. They're called biological molecules. These aren't just building blocks. These are the molecules necessary for every living thing on Earth to survive. They are essential sources of energy. They are the means of storing that energy. They are also the instructions that all organisms use to be born, to grow, and ultimately pass those same instructions on to their future generation. They are the ingredients for life.
All right, we're going to start the activity now. So what do you think might be the 3 most important molecules of the Earth the host is referring to? You might have your screens in front of you where you have the option to answer. So we can see that how many people are, participating. So I'll keep it like this. You have a time for, I think, it's an open-ended question. I'll give you 2 minutes to 2 to 3 minutes max to answer this question. It's a simple question. What are the 3 most important molecules on Earth that the speaker, the host, was referring to? All right, good. 15% of the boys have answered. Very good. Excellent job. Once you're done, I'll read everybody's answer. Ghazi has a question. Yes, Ghazi, what is your question?
Mister, it was from the beginning of Nearport, خلاص.
Okay. So those boys who just recently joined,
Is it like, can I say oxygen and stuff, or do I have to say?
you can write any answer you like. It's okay, as long as you think what is important molecules, but you have to make sure that this is the molecule that he was talking about. Right?
I think so, because he talked about water and pee and carbon.
So whatever you think it's correct, you can write it down. No problem. Remember, at this time, there are no right answers, no wrong answers. So I'm going to just leave a message for those who just came in that this is the link that they have to join. This is with the code. Okay, so let's see, we have spent 2 minutes. Let's check the answer, 77%. Abbas hasn't done any answer yet. Omar says 21. I don't know what is 21. Ghazi says oxygen, water, and cherserol. I don't know what is cherserol. And carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, good, excellent answer. Dia, oxygen, carbon, good, very good, excellent. Oxygen, well done, Jawad. Amro, core of Earth, oxygen and water, excellent. Oxygen, hydrogen, good. And Tahir, very well. Oh, water, oxygen, and DNA, very good. Yeah, water and carbon, good, Salman. Water and oxygen. So, excellent answers, boys. Good thinking. These are all of them are very important molecules. Let's check with the host. What does he have to say about it?
And we call them the carbohydrates, the lipids, the proteins, and the nucleic acids. And today we're just going to be talking about the first three.
You guys are also correct because it was mentioned in the question about the elements. When it comes to elements, these are not elements, these are compounds. I think that was, yeah, molecules. So we are talking about the molecules on Earth. And yes, some people have mentioned that it was DNA and water. So I agree with you guys as well.
And we call them the carbohydrates, the lipids, the proteins, and the nucleic acids. And today we're just going to be talking about the first three. It's no coincidence that we classify them in the same way that we classify food, because they're food. And for this classification, we have to thank a little-known English physician who, hundreds of years ago, dedicated his life to the study of human pee.
Oh, my goodness, I'm back in the... That must mean that it's time for the most awkwardly named segment here on Crash Course, the biolography. His name was William Prout, and in the early 1800s he became fascinated with human digestion, especially our urine. And that's because he thought that the best way to understand the human body was through chemistry, and the best way to understand the body's chemistry was to understand what it does to food. By day, he was a practicing physician, but every morning before breakfast he did research in his home laboratory in London. And there he did many great things, like being the first to discover that our stomachs contained hydrochloric acid, and writing a breakthrough book about kidney stones called An Inquiry into the Nature and Treatment of Gravel, Calculus, and Other Diseases Connected with a Deranged Operation of Urinary Organs. And he was, of course, the first person to discover the chemical composition of pure urea, the main component of urine. For the record, here it is, and in the presence of water, urea gives off ammonia, which is why your pee smells. Through his years of studying urine, Prout came to the conclusion that all foodstuffs fell into three categories: the saccharinous, carbohydrates, the oleaginous, the fats, and the albuminous, the proteins. He went so far as to say that in order to be healthy, you needed to eat all three of these things, not just, sheep kidneys and gin, which is probably what most of London was living on at the time. But like many great minds, Prout was overlooked in his own lifetime because while he was studying actual science, everybody else was walking around believing that the color of your urine was determined by your personality. And this guy looks like a total jerk to me. And if you can tell that much by color, I wonder what you can tell by taste.
Now, he didn't understand that there were biological molecules. He didn't understand what these things were, but he did understand that there were three ingredients necessary for life. And it turns out that all organisms either need to synthesize or ingest those ingredients in order to live.
All right, this was gross. Seeing somebody drinking his own pee. That's, I think it was just a juice. He was just playing around with us. So here's a question. What does synthesize mean in the context of the host statement that all organisms either need to synthesize or ingest those ingredients in order to live? So how many of you would like to answer this? Oh, some of you have already answered it. So we have option A, synthesize, making, make. B option, combine. C is, excuse me. C is produce sound, and D is no answer. So synthesize, either it makes combine or make or produce sound. So up till now, we have 12% people are correct, 50% are incorrect, and no answer by 37% people. So looking at the pie chart, what do you guys think? Who's correct? Yusuf has a question. Okay, Mansoor also was raising a hand, so I'll give the mic to Mansoor first. Yes, Mansoor.
Hello, mister. How do I answer?
You have to open a website with the link. The link that I've shared, once you open it up, then you have to log in with your name. Then I can see that you're here, like I can see the participants over here. OS and Bassam and Basim and Muhammad. So you will appear, your name will appear here. And through that web page, you will be able to answer them and I can see your answers here.
Okay.
All right? Okay. So Yusuf is raising a hand. Yes, Yusuf.
Mister, because I guessed the thing because the video lagged for me and it just started repeating the 1 minute. It didn't go to the 3 minutes.
Okay, so you can watch the video on your website as well. If my video is lagging, try to watch the video on your browser, right?
Okay.
You can put it to mute and watch your video. And the word synthesize, what do you think it is?
It makes.
Yes, it is correct then. The word synthesize means to make, to produce, not to combine. It is option A, which is the correct option. 30%. As you can see, this is 30%. This is A. This is the right answer. Right? So good job, boys. Those who have done combine is also okay, but technically, make is the more right option. All right, so let's go to.
We're going to start out with the most basic of these ingredients for life, and that is the carbohydrate. You've no doubt heard of them. You may, in fact, be avoiding them like the plague. But the fact is that nothing and no one can avoid carbohydrates because they are the source of all energy that we have available to us. Carbohydrates are made up of sugars, and the simplest of them are called monosaccharides. Mono for one, saccharides for the actual root of the word sugar. The star of the show here is glucose, because it's truly fundamental, by which I mean like #1 on the global food chain, because it comes from the sun. All biological energy is originally captured from the sun by plants as glucose through photosynthesis. And every cell that needs energy uses glucose to get that energy through a process called respiration. In addition to glucose, there are other monosaccharides like fructose, which has the same molecular formula, C6H12O6, but arranged differently. These subtle chemical differences do matter. Fructose, for example, is significantly sweeter than glucose. It's also processed by our bodies in different ways. And then there are disaccharides, which, like the name says, are just two monosaccharides put together. And the most famous of these is sucrose, which is simply a glucose molecule and a fructose molecule joined by a covalent bond. Mono and disaccharides are pretty much little niblets of energy that are really easy for our bodies to process. But when these carbohydrates start to form into longer and longer chains, their function and their roles change as well. Instead of being sources for instant energy, they become storehouses of energy or structural compounds. These are polysaccharides. Instead of being just 2 or 3 monosaccharides put together, polysaccharides can contain thousands of simple sugar units.
All right, boys, those who have recently joined the class, please follow the link. Try to join the link. All right, which of the following are the best sources of longer-term stored energy for our bodies? So we're going to discuss about the stored energy. Which one of them is the best source for keeping it for a long period of time in our bodies? Long period of time. So let's see your answers. One of them, A, is monosaccharides. B is disaccharides. Monosaccharides is like glucose. Disaccharides like sugar, and polysaccharides as like starch. So starch and disaccharides and monosaccharides, there are 3 forms of sugar. There are 3 forms of the carbohydrates. Which one of them can we use to store it for a longer period of time in our body? Polysaccharides could be glycogen as well. Disaccharides are sugars, fructose and maltose. Monosaccharides are glucose and fructose. Disaccharides are sucrose and maltose. So which one of them can we use to, you know, store it for a longer period of time. So let's see the answers. The percentage, we have the highest percentage is of disaccharides, which is 47%. Then monosaccharides 42, and then polysaccharides 22. So we have got 4 different opinions. The fourth group doesn't even know what to do. So, okay. The correct is 22.2%. Now, which one of them, monosaccharide or polysaccharide? It's actually the polysaccharides. The polysaccharides are like a starch or glycogen. Well, Amino is asking about how to upload a new Word file. When you go to the homework, you will see there's an option that you can upload the files. So choose that option, please. Or I can send you a screenshot of it through the email. Just send me a query through the email. So polysaccharide is the right answer. They will be stored as, you know, for a longer period of time, like glycogen and starch.
And because they're so big and burly, they're great for building with. In plants, cellulose is the most common structural compound. It's just a bunch of glucose molecules bound together, and it is the most common organic compound on the planet. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to digest. Cows can do it, but humans certainly cannot, which is why you don't enjoy eating grass. Polysaccharides are also really good for storing energy, and not just structurally, but just as an energy store. And that's where we get bread. Now, really interesting thing here, bread made up of starch, the most simple of which is called amylose. Amylose and cellulose look almost exactly identical, but one is grass and the other is bread. Like chemistry.
All right, which of the following is a polysaccharide often responsible for providing structure to the plants? Which of them? Is it amylose, cellulose, glucose? So which one of them is providing you with the structure of the plants? Structure of the plants. Polysaccharide. Remember the polysaccharide. If you are selecting glucose, then you should know that it is not a polysaccharide. That's a monosaccharide. So do not choose option glucose. I'm taking away one answer from you. If my video is lagging, boys, you can use your own browser. You can see the video yourself before you answer this question. So do not choose the option C, choose between A and B, amylose or cellulose. I hope you will be able to answer it right. Or are you guys trying to make this the sign of the peace? Abdullah just joined in. Abdullah, you have to join this website. I'll send the message to everyone again. Log on to this site, please, and try to participate. Okay, the correct answer is cellulose. Cellulose is the right answer. Cellulose is the carbohydrate which is giving you the structure of the plant. So how many boys participated in the answer? About 16% people are not answering, and let's go ahead.
Plants store glucose in the form of starch, and it comes in lots and lots of different forms, from roots and tubers to the sweet flesh of fruits to the starchy seeds of the wheat plant that end up being milled into flour. Ground up grain is the main ingredient in the bread, of course, and most of the calories, or the energy content, comes from carbohydrates. When I eat this, and I'm going to eat the hell out of it, I'm going to be eating all of the chemical energy that this wheat plant got from the sun in order to feed its next generation of seeds that we then stole for our own use. All for me. Now, we as human beings can't grow fruits or tubers, so we have to store our energy in a couple of different ways. The way that we tend to store carbohydrate energy is in glycogen, which is very similar to amylose or starch, but has more branches and is more complicated. It's basically made up of the glucose that we have left over after we eat, and it sits in our muscles really ready to use, and it's also stored in our livers. It's generally a pretty short-term store. If we don't eat for like a day, pretty much all of our glycogen gets depleted. But over the longer term, the way that we store our energy is through fat. All of our mom's worst enemies, the fat, which turn out to be actually really important and are the most familiar sort of a very important biological molecule, the lipid. Lipids are smaller and simpler than complex carbohydrates, and they're grouped together because they share an inability to dissolve in water. This is because their chemical bonds are mostly nonpolar. And since water, as we learned in the previous episode, despises nonpolar molecules, the two do not mix. It's like oil and water. In fact, it's exactly like oil and water. And if you've ever read a nutrition label or seen this thing called the television, you're probably pretty conversant in the way that we classify fats. But then, 99% of us have no idea what those classifications actually mean. Fats are made up mainly of two chemical ingredients, glycerol, which is a kind of alcohol, and fatty acids, which are long carbon-hydrogen chains that end in a carboxyl group. When you get three fatty acid molecules together and connect them to a glycerol, that's a triglyceride. These feature prominently in things like butter and peanut butter and oils and the white parts of meat. These triglycerides can either be saturated or unsaturated, and I know that when we put the word fat and saturated into the same sentence, it sounds like an evening at KFC, but here we're talking about being saturated with hydrogen. As you hopefully remember from our first lesson, carbon is very nimble in how it uses its 4 electrons. It can form single or double or even sometimes triple bonds. This means that if the carbon atoms in a fatty acid are connected to each other with single bonds, all of the carbon atoms end up connected to at least 2 hydrogen atoms, and one of them picks up a third. So the fatty acid is saturated with hydrogen. But when some of the carbon atoms are connected to each other with double bonds, all of those carbon's electrons are spoken for, and so they're not able to pick up those hydrogen atoms. This means that they're not saturated with hydrogen, and they are unsaturated fatty acids. To demonstrate, may I direct your attention to this jar of peanut butter. Here you can kind of see both kinds of fat. The liquid stuff you see at the top here, that is the unsaturated fat, which we generally think of as oils. The pasty stuff down here also contains lots of unsaturated fat, but also contains saturated fat, which doesn't have any double bonds, so it can pack more tightly and form solids at room temperature.
All right, which of the following is not true of saturated and unsaturated fats? Saturated fats are saturated with hydrogen, while unsaturated fats are not because they do not have electrons available to bond with the hydrogen. Second, saturated fats can pack more tightly and form solids at room temperature, while unsaturated fats are in liquid at room temperature. C, saturated fats, because they lack double bonds between their carbon atoms, stay liquid at room temperature, while unsaturated fats form solids, and then there is zero option. If you guys remember, these saturated fats are those which do not have a double bond, and saturated fats do not contain double bonds, and unsaturated fats contain double bonds. So what do you guys think? A is telling you that saturated fats are saturated with hydrogen, while unsaturated fats are not because they do not have electrons available to bond with hydrogen. This doesn't make any sense. So take away option A. So I'm giving you the option B and C. Choose between B and C. Saturated fats can pack more tightly and form solids. This is not what he said, or was it? He showed you the peanut butter, and he said that the peanut butter is in solid state and it contains some of the, if you remember the presentation, we discussed that the saturated bonds was the margarine and unsaturated bonds was the oil, the liquid oil. So option C is correct. Saturated fats, they do not have a double bond and they stay liquid at room temperature. Right? So option C is the right answer. Okay, let's go to the
room temperature. And there are also other fat classifications that you've heard of. Trans fats, which everyone tells you never to eat. They're right, don't eat them. They don't exist in nature and are basically unsaturated fatty acids that instead of kinking, go straight across, and so they're extra super bad for you. Don't eat them. Omega-3 fats are fatty acids that are unsaturated at the 3 position, which is like right there. Then that's the only difference. But the reason why these are important is because we can't synthesize them ourselves. They're essential fatty acids, meaning that we need to eat them in order to get them. All this is starting to make me pretty hungry. But before we get to more food stuff, there are some unappetizing sort of lipids that we also need to talk about. So remember that triglycerides are 3 fatty acids connected to a glycerol. Swap one of those fatty acids out for a phosphate group and you have a phospholipid. And these make up cell membrane walls. Since that phosphate group gives that end a polarity, it's attracted to water. And the other end is nonpolar and it avoids water. So if you were to scatter a bunch of phospholipids into some water, they would automatically arrange themselves like this, with the hydrophobic ends facing each other and the hydrophilic ends sticking out to face the water. Every cell in your body uses this natural structure to form its cell wall in order to keep the bad stuff out and the good stuff
in. Okay, in your own words, describe how phospholipids work to form the cell membranes. In your own words, you have to describe how phospholipids work to form the cell membrane. Now remember, the phospholipids have 2 parts. One is water-loving and one is water-repelling. It pushes the water away, avoids the water. One is loving the water. So when they are put into the water, they arrange themselves in a way that the tails are inside together and the heads are outside facing the water. So the tails are pushing away the water and the head is accepting the water. So this is how the cell membrane looks like. And this is the way to keep the things in and out of the cell membrane. So that's how it works as a semi-permeable membrane. So you guys have 2 minutes to answer this. Okay, we have received answers. Let's check. They are like magnet, the top like water, and the tail hates the water. Yes, the tail has to be T-A-I-L. I-L. This tail is a story. T-A-L-E. Okay, good. Ghazi is the only one who has answered. Basim, they avoid water and arrange together. The tail avoids the water and the head loves the water. So they arrange themselves in this way. Abdulaziz Alam says he doesn't understand. Okay, we'll check with Maha. Abdulaziz, this is one of the old lessons we have discussed about the structure of the cell membrane, and we have discussed that it is made up of 1 phospholipid with the 2 fatty acids and a glycerol. So they are all in a part of our, what do you call it? The cell membrane of every living organism. So let's check who hasn't answered yet. So the time is up. So we'll move on because the lesson is about to finish. Yes, Mu'an says by letting 2 cells like a magnet and avoid water. Okay. All right. So the time is up. Let's move on.
Stuff in. Another class of lipids is the steroids. Steroids have a backbone of 4 interconnected carbon rings, which can be used to form hundreds of variations. The most fundamental of them is cholesterol, which binds with phospholipids to help form cell walls. But these can also be activated to turn into different lipid hormones. And so now we approach the most complicated, powerful, polymorphously awesome chemicals in our body. The protein. And by complicated, I mean that they are probably the most complicated chemical compounds on the planet. In fact, they're so amazing that we're going to do a separate episode on them and how they are created by DNA. But right now, in you, there are tens of thousands of proteins doing everything they can to keep you alive. There are enzymes regulating chemical processes, helping you digest food. There are antibodies connecting themselves to invaders like bacteria and viruses so that your immune system can get them. There are protein endorphins that like mess around with your brain and make you like feel emotions. They're everywhere. They do everything.
So the last question, which of the following does not describe a protein function? He was mentioning that the protein is doing every function in our body, almost every. Enzymes, short-term energy, antibody, endorphin. So what do you think? I'll help you with that. Enzymes, yes, they are proteins, so don't choose option A. Energy, yes, these molecules contain energy as well. And the rest is with you guys. Do we have a chat? What is this last thing? The last thing is no answer. So the antibodies is for the immunity. The endorphin is actually a hormone. So hormones, antibodies, and all the enzymes are all proteins. So you're only left with the one option, which is a short-term energy. And the correct answer is short-term energy. We don't take proteins as short-term energy. It's glucose, which is the short-term energy. So the glucose. So we are left with almost no time. So let's go and complete the video.
Everything. And proteins do all of this stuff using just 20 different ingredients, and these are the amino acids. Just like fatty acids, amino acids have a carboxyl group at one end, and on the other end, they have an amino group, amino acid. Now hey, I don't know if you noticed this, but this is the first time that nitrogen has shown up in our food. This is super important because despite the fact that nitrogen is like everywhere, it's like 80% of the air, we can't just pull it out of the air and put it into our bodies. We have to get nitrogen from food, and so we have to eat foods that are high in protein, like this egg, which by its very virtue, because it is all the white part is protein, it contains a goodly amount of nitrogen. Now in the middle of the amino and the acid group is a carbon, and it shares one of its electrons with the good old hydrogen, and the other electron is free to be shared with R, which is just a kind of fill in the blank. We call it the R group. It could also be called a side chain, and there are 20 different kinds of side chains. Whatever fits in that blank will determine the shape and the function of that amino acid. So if you put this in there, you get valine, which is an amino acid that does a lot of stuff like protecting and building muscle tissue. And if you put this in there, you get tryptophan, which may be best known for its role in helping you regulate mood and energy levels. Amino acids form long chains called polypeptides. Proteins are formed when these polypeptides not only connect, but elaborate in, frankly, really elegant structures. They fold, they coil, they twist. If they were sculptures, I would go to the museum every day just to look at them, and I'd walk straight past the nudes without even looking. But protein synthesis is only possible if you have all of the amino acids necessary, and there are 9 of them that we can't make ourselves. Histidine, isoleucine, leucine, lysine, methionine, phenylalanine, threonine, tryptophan, and valine. By eating foods that are high in protein, we can digest them down into their base particles and then use these essential amino acids in building up our own proteins. Some foods, especially ones that contain animal protein, have all of the essential amino acids, including this egg. And that concludes this triple-decker sandwich of biological awesomeness, which is all we need to be happy, healthy people. And I'm sure, because of that, it's going to be delicious.
All right, that would be the end of it. What is one question you still have about biological molecules? So this would be your exit ticket. Just write it down and then you can leave. So keep the meeting on for another 2 minutes if you can answer this question. If there is no question, you can write there is no question. If there is a question, please write it down and then you can leave. I'll stop the recording here.